Hello, my name is Brennan Jones and welcome back to another analysis on BioHarvest Sciences. It amazes me how far this company has come from when I first made a video on it 2 years ago, and really the room it still has left to run. From the outside looking in, I view this company as like an infant, just learning to walk with an explosive growth spurt ahead. The science that makes up the foundation of this company is one that I believe could truly change our world for the better. Some believe this company utilizes technologies not seen by any other corporation. However, I'm here to tell you that's simply not true. There are among many corporations that utilize biology to create real value to the world through the use of cell culture. Many of them utilize the same processes and technologies as BioHarvest with slight variations. However, what sets the company apart from the rest is the company's intellectual property. Because of this, I believe BioHarvest will be an industry leader. We live in a world of scarce resources and unlimited demand, and we are starting to hit our breaking point on some critical resources. Sustainability is without a doubt necessary for the advancement of future generations to come, and I believe this company will have a huge part to play in creating that future. Before I go any further, I want to remind anyone who's watched my videos before and to let anyone who just stumbled upon my channel to know that I am an investor in this company, and none of what I say should be considered investment advice. Always do your own research and get the advice of a professional on what's best for you and your investment strategy. Now that that's out of the way, as you all know from the title, this video will be focusing on the cannabis side of BioHarvest Sciences. However, in this video, I will try my best to simplify the science, technology, and processes that I believe this company utilizes and what truly makes it unique from any other cannabis corporation. Here is a simplified diagram of how the company is able to grow not only their cannabis cells, but also their red grape cells in their product Vinia. It starts with choosing the desired plant to replicate over and over again. BioHarvest can take the cells from any plant in the plant kingdom, isolate the desired cells, and multiply them through what's called bioprocessing. Bioprocessing is the creation of useful products through the use of a living thing. Or another name for the process they utilize daily is cell culture, by which cells are grown under controlled conditions, generally outside their natural environment. Or in a fancier way of saying it, the cells are grown in vitro. When the desired cell or cells are chosen, those cells are then isolated from the rest of the plant and are made to be multiplied into many individual samples and are then cryopreserved. What is cryopreservation? Cryopreservation is a technique for maintaining biologics at extremely low temperatures, usually at or below -80 degrees Celsius, for extended periods of time, which can range from days to years. These cells are then stored within a cell bank in liquid nitrogen. That cell bank is then referred to as a master cell bank, where cell samples will be drawn from to create working cell banks, where just one sample from the master will be enough to create a whole working cell bank. If done correctly and consistently, this process can be done indefinitely, while still maintaining the original cells from the donor plant. This makes one half of BioHarvest's claim of being able to have fingerprint consistency when it comes to their products. The other half resides in the containers that grow these cells, single-use plastic bag bioreactors. Typically, these plastic bags can get to sizes of 2,000 to 3,000 liters, and depending on the supplier, even 6,000 liters. Batches of cells are grown within these plastic bags at just the right conditions in an aseptic environment. The cells are grown in what's called suspension. A cell suspension or suspension culture is a type of cell culture in which single cells or small aggregates of cells are allowed to function and multiply in an agitated growth medium, thus forming a suspension. That medium is commonly referred to as culture media. Media is essentially a nutrient broth that cells float around in to be able to grow and multiply into larger and larger amounts of biomass. The essential elements in plant cell or tissue culture media include, besides carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, macroelements, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. And there are three main ways of bioprocessing: batch process, fed batch process, and continuous process, or what is known as perfusion. Batch culture is a closed culture system that contains limited amounts of nutrients. In batch culture, cells grow in a finite volume of liquid medium. The advantages of a batch process include a short growth cycle, an unlikely chance of contamination as it's a closed system from the start of the process, and it's easier to manage. The disadvantages are the product is mixed in with the nutrients, reagents, cell debris, and toxins. Because of its shorter processing time, its yields are much smaller and not practical for industrial processing. Then there's fed batch. Fed batch culture is, in the broadest sense, defined as an operational technique in biotechnological processes where one or more nutrients, substrates, are supplied to the bioreactor during cultivation, and in which the products remain in the bioreactor until the end of the run. The advantages of fed batch are the self-culture becomes more productive as its growth duration is extended within the bioreactor. Genes can be made to be turned on and off by changing the substrate, which just means the medium in which an organism grows in. And the culture can be manipulated to its maximum productivity using different feeding methods. The disadvantages are toxins and agents can still build up within the media culture. And there's a possibility for contamination in the culture as external inputs are used outside of the culture. And finally, there's perfusion. Perfusion is a process that uses a method to keep cells in a bioreactor while continuously exchanging culture medium. Fresh medium replenishes nutrients and carbon sources, while cellular waste and medium depleted of nutrients are removed. This process is what is used for continuous bioprocessing, and what I believe is the process used in BioHarvest Vinia production. I pressed the company about whether or not perfusion was used for cannabis, but they declined to comment. The advantages include maximum yields and productivity is achieved. Time to clean, sterilize, and handling of the bioreactor system is reduced. And it provides a better environment to purify metabolites. The disadvantages are difficult to retain a constant population density over a long period of time. If a batch fails, larger amounts of the product must be discarded and a larger amount of time and energy is wasted. And increased chance for contamination and genetic changes within the culture environment. Once the desired yield is achieved within any of these processes, the bags are then discarded along with the media. Written in BioHarvest Sustainability Report from 2021 that's free to read on their website, they acknowledge their footprint in terms of water consumption and plastic use in this statement. The main waste resulting from our biofarming process is wastewater. The wastewater is fully biodegradable and contains no chemicals. It is subject to regular biological oxygen demand testing and is emitted for regular wastewater treatment. Other waste from our production consists mainly of plastic and cardboard. In 2020, we produced 1.5 tons of waste. There is no hazardous waste resulting from our production. We are committed to steadily improving our recycling rate and to monitor and manage our waste according to regulatory requirements. Now I know what you're already thinking. That's such a huge waste of cardboard and mainly plastic, and I get it, I really do. But to quote the famous economist Thomas Sowell, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. When you consider the trade-offs of using a single-use plastic bag bioreactor for growing of cannabis over traditional farming, based on claims made by the company, traditional growers average 4.84 grams of dry flower per gallon of water, whereas BioHarvest averages 260 grams per gallon, a difference of 54 times more efficient. In terms of electricity, regular flower consumes 1 kilowatt hour to grow 0.8 grams, whereas BioHarvest grows 6.18 grams per kilowatt hour, around 8 times more productive. The amount of cannabis per 1000 watt light/bioreactor is 1 kilogram for an average grower compared to 8 kilograms produced by BioHarvest. Average grower can produce about 5 grow cycles per year compared to BioHarvest 14 cycles. Total cannabis produced by the company for one bioreactor per square meter equates to 112 kilograms, as opposed to the 5 kilograms produced by traditional cannabis farming. How this can be achieved is because of the processes used by the company. The seedling and vegetative stages can be bypassed completely, and the cells can jump straight into the flowering phase and then into the harvesting phase, as the cell culture process of cannabis farming takes 3 to 4 weeks as opposed to 14 to 23 weeks for traditional cannabis flower. BioHarvest capital expenditure to produce 1 ton of cannabis averages out to be $120,000 to $150,000 per ton. That, in combination with 1,200 square meters of land, will net them an annual production of upwards of 30 metric tons of cannabis per year. 1,200 square meters translates to around 12,916 square feet of growing space. All of that in comparison to the average 10,000 square feet to produce 1 ton of traditionally grown cannabis makes the argument against using single-use plastic bag bioreactors seem short-sighted. The company has listed its goals to reduce its footprint by improving water efficiency by 10% per ton of product, improving energy intensity by 25% per ton of product, reducing operational plastic use by 20%, and achieving 90% use of recyclable packaging, all by the year of 2025. Now, I'll move on to the next portion of the process of what they call bioplant cellicitation. I'll explain exactly what they mean by that in a second. When you first open their website, BioHarvest labeled themselves as a plant cell growth company. And because of this, I believe for their growing conditions, they utilize what are called photobioreactors. Photobioreactors are used for photosynthetic organisms, as they need sunlight in order to grow. Photobioreactors have a transparent film to allow light to enter within the bioreactor and reach the microorganisms within. One of the reasons why I believe they use them is due to this old photo I shared in my last analysis of the bioreactors used in the Cannabis cell interview with the chairman of the board, Zaki Rakib. Underneath those bioreactors looks to be a grow light. Written on the white paper, Design of Photobioreactors for Mass Cultivation of Photosynthetic Organisms, published by Elsevier Ltd. On behalf of the Chinese Academy of Engineering and Higher Education Press Limited Company. This paper gives an excellent insight into how photobioreactors operate. Not all light is created the same. Optimal light for photosynthesis is called photosynthetically active radiation, or PAR, and sits in the 400 to 700 nanometer length of the electromagnetic spectrum. Non-PAR light, like ultraviolet radiation, is lethal for cells and should be limited as much as possible. When light hits the bag, it's the most intense at the very beginning of the bag in the strong illumination zone, and quickly fades as the light penetrates through the bag and has to make its way through the media and cell culture. If it has too much light, it could hamper the growth of the cells in a light-induced reduction in the photosynthetic capacity of a plant. And if it has too little light, it could collapse the culture entirely. And just like us, in order to grow properly, they need a mix of both light and darkness, known as the light-dark cycle. And according to this paper, one of the researchers found that a flashing light effect could enhance photosynthesis and improve the quality and quantity of the products grown. Aside from light, when growing plant cells in bioreactors, there are many other factors into making sure the desired yields are achieved, while at the same time managing to keep the cells alive under cellular suspension. The next factors are mixing and mass transfer. Mixing is so crucial to the process because when mixing occurs, it aids what is called mass transfer. Mass transfer is when the biomass and gases move within the media culture from one point in the bioreactor to another to ensure those cells receive adequate light and nutrient exposure within the media, along with lowering the temperature gradient, as well as prevent cell sedimentation, dead zones within the culture, and cell attachment to the walls of the photobioreactor. As the mass grows larger and larger within the culture, this becomes an increasingly tougher task, as the biomass becomes more dense and a lot harder to properly move without damaging the cells. Variables within the bioreactor must be constantly monitored and be adjusted to accommodate the ever-increasing amount of biomass. However, if the mixing is done too harshly, it can create shear forces on the cells that could end up killing the culture. However, this doesn't seem to be a problem for BioHarvest amalgamated coral-like trichome structure of their cannabis, according to the company.
Obviously, a very important part of our IP. It's a game changer for us because when the actual trichomes are all locked together in this dense way, they become much stronger. And therefore, as we move into large bioreactors to get the scale, these trichomes are able to defend themselves against shear forces that are happening in the bioreactors. And this allows the trichomes to continue through their growth cycle without any damages, which is a real game changer from a scalability perspective.
Given this quote from Eitan Popper, the chairman of BioHarvest Board of Advisors, on August 19, 2021 press release, even intuitively, this is far from trivial, as cannabis trichome cells grown in liquid media lack the static mechanical support they have when growing on top of or attached to the solid cannabis flower or leaf tissue. The challenge is twofold, not only liquid media versus solid plant tissue, but also dynamic flow conditions versus static conditions. Put simply, how do you stably proliferate and guarantee the physical integrity of fragile plant organs grown in a liquid that is circulating or flowing within a bioreactor? Next is the introduction of a carbon source for the culture, where carbon dioxide or another source is dissolved within the media to reach the plant cells in order to undergo photosynthesis. Then, as a byproduct, oxygen will leave the cell and become dissolved within the media. Once within the liquid, it will have to be removed, otherwise it could be toxic to the cells if found in large quantities. Which brings me to my next point, where if there's too much carbon dioxide dissolved within the media, it can lower the pH of the liquid. Because dissolved carbon dioxide is acidic. Like, for example, rainwater that is saturated with this gas is naturally acidic, usually about a pH of 5.6. pH needs to be within a certain range depending on the species of plant cell, as to prevent the culture from breaking down because of the destruction of cellular processes due to a detrimental pH. For this reason, sometimes sodium bicarbonate is utilized as a carbon source for the cells, as it produces a more stable pH within the culture media. And lastly, the temperature within the cell culture, as temperature is a principal factor in the photocatalytic reaction and has an impact on the chemical equilibrium of the species, the gas solubility, and the pH as well, with cannabis being grown ideally in a temperature range of 24 to 29 degrees Celsius. All these factors combined make growing plant cells incredibly challenging, as conditions must be constantly changed and brought up to comfortable conditions for the cells in order to grow to their desired yields and contain their desired primary and secondary metabolites. Which brings me back to their trademarked bioplant cellicitation process. Well, what does that mean? It's what will separate BioHarvest from every single cannabis producer, as this part is literally the holy grail and truly the end game for cannabis production going forward. Along with establishing the launch of BioHarvest name into the mainstream and the introduction of bioprocessed cell products into households. Their cannabis product was announced just over a year ago as BioTricho Bubbles. When compared to traditional cannabis, those BioTricho Bubbles house 100 to 200 times the trichome density of regular cannabis. I believe they're able to do this with a process called elicitation. Elicitation is one of the most effective techniques currently used for improving the biotechnological production of secondary metabolites. Elicitors are compounds that stimulate any type of plant defense, promoting secondary metabolism to protect the cell and the whole plant. Now, when I bring up this chart of the product pipeline of BioHarvest portfolio, Vinia has an increased level of piceid resveratrol of 100 times when compared to what's found in nature. Olivia has 5 times the levels of verboscoside compared to an ordinary olive. Pomia has 10 times the levels of PGG polyphenol concentration when side by side with a normal pomegranate, and under their cannabis banner, it's currently unknown as it is not found at this level or conformity together in a single plant. For those reasons, I believe the cannabinoid concentrations in their BioTricho Bubbles are higher than any strain that can be grown out of the ground, much higher. Like, I'm talking about cannabinoid levels so high that even seasoned veterans of smoking cannabis wouldn't stand a frickin' chance. Like, let's say that your cannabis at home has a label that says it has 20% THC. I believe they're able to produce cannabis with cannabinoid levels in the hundreds of percent, if not the thousands, based on their claim of having 100 to 200 times the trichome density of regular cannabis. It also makes sense why the company has struggled in order to measure the cannabinoids correctly.
And this one, I get a lot of questions around. They're like, why do you need to actually develop new measurement methods? Well, because of the uniqueness of our biofarming technology and the fact that we're pioneering history on so many levels, and the unique composition of our trichomes. There's nothing off the shelf out there or literature that can actually tell us how to actually build the measurement methods to be able to understand the actual concentration levels within the cannabinoids in our trichomes.
When it comes to the production of their cannabis, I don't believe isolating the trichome cells and growing them within the bioreactors is necessarily the trick to creating biotrichal bubbles. I believe their process takes a combination of different cell types from the plant in order to create the magic that is their cannabis. The reason I jumped to that conclusion is due to the quote from the CEO, Ilan Sobel, in regards to their Vinia process.
In the case of our Vinia product, which is our red grape cell product, which we have now started to generate significant revenue, we take the plant, we take cells from the skin, we take cells from the flesh, we take cells from the seed. And from these cells, we actually grow the critical phytomedicinal compounds, which are the key polyphenols.
That's why I believe October 25th of 2022 will be an absolutely historic day as the company plans to announce its composition of one of their cannabis strains. But that's not all. I made a prediction in my first analysis back in 2020 that the company would be exploring ways in order to make their cannabis product water soluble. My speculation is that they're trying to produce water-soluble cannabis. Now, I can't prove any of this, but Dr. Zaki Rakib, the current chairman, he was quoted saying,
I can't tell you at this point whether the powder will be water-soluble or not. This is something that we'll be seeing. The other products that we have produced so far using our biofarming technology is water-soluble, but this is not a promise I can make as of yet.
well, I may have just been onto something.
What we found is that with our cannabinoids, they are able to deal very well with the high acid, low pH. And that resembles your stomach. And therefore, we believe that our cannabinoids will be able to, let's call it, operate very efficiently within our stomach for those people that are actually consuming the cannabis in edibles or in a beverage. And there will be very little degradation of the cannabinoids as it enters into our system.
So, with a cannabis flower that has a higher concentration than anything else ever grown, and a potentially higher bioavailability than regular flower, leads me to believe that lower amounts of the product need to be consumed when ingested or inhaled, as the bioavailability of THC through the oral route is approximately 10 to 20%, which means that 10 to 20% of the parent compound eventually reaches the bloodstream. So if someone were to consume a cannabis edible gummy with 10 milligrams, only 1 to 2 milligrams will be absorbed into the bloodstream and be effectively utilized by the body. Bioavailability, I believe, will be the key to cannabis products going forward. If cannabis has any chance of competing with alcohol, it needs to be more readily absorbed within the body through ingesting it. Because alcohols form hydrogen bonds with water, they tend to be relatively soluble in water. If consumers had the choice between smoking or vaping cannabis compared to drinking a six-pack of cannabis drinks, I'd bet money that more people would reach for that six-pack if the effects of drinking those cannabis drinks acted just as fast, if not faster, than consuming alcohol. When lower amounts of product are used to achieve the same high that consumers expect, it will ultimately translate into larger amounts of revenue and higher profits for the company as they enter into an already oversaturated market with premium prices set by cannabis producers with less efficient technologies and processes. This is referred to as technological deflation. As time and technologies progress, production and processes become more efficient and in most cases cheaper. Not everyone will like the disruption that comes from bioprocessing companies like BioHarvest. But as the human race advances, it becomes inevitable. With higher fertilizer, water, and energy costs being placed on the licensed producers and multi-state operators, I believe the company will be able to maneuver around any hurdle in front of them and will come out of whatever may happen to the global economy this coming decade. With all signs pointing to global stagflation and possibly even a transitory hyperinflationary depression, I believe with the much lower costs to produce not only cannabis but other scarce plant products, the company will be able to navigate the uncharted waters we're about to enter as a global community and come out as a dominating player. And I attribute this to the company's overall size, valuation, cost to operate and produce, and overall their ability to provide tremendous human utility value, as I've witnessed it firsthand with how it's helped myself and my family personally. I believe they will be able to match and beat the market prices of the cannabis grown in every legal cannabis market they enter into, while at the same time generating very sizable returns. The days of giant cannabis greenhouses are rapidly declining and heading towards insolvency, in my personal opinion. It's not about how much you grow, it's about how you grow it and how your products stand out from the rest. And with BioHarvest non-GMO, full spectrum, heightened, bioavailable, cannabinoid cannabis, I believe I'm witnessing the rise of a titan. Thank you for sticking around. I truly appreciate you watching to the end of the video. This video is mostly speculation and I don't want to take anything away from the scientists and researchers behind this company and the incredible work they've done over the past 15 years. They are the true inspiration behind making this video and why I'm excited to see where they take this company in the coming decades. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.